It began as an ordinary library, dusty shelves, creaking floors, and the faint smell of old paper drifting through the air. People came here for peace, for knowledge, for a quiet escape from the world. But there was one thing nobody could explain. Every time a book left the library, it returned with a new ending, written in the same style, the same ink, as if the author themselves had risen from the grave to finish the story. The difference was chilling. These endings didn't just change the book, they predicted the reader's future. At first, no one believed it. A teenager borrowed a romance novel, only to find a final chapter about a heartbreak she never saw coming, until it happened weeks later. A man checked out a crime thriller, the rewritten pages describing a tragic accident he later suffered. Whispers spread, fear and fascination mixing in equal measure. People began testing it, some desperately wanting to know what was coming, others too terrified to open the final pages at all. Among the curious was Clara, a quiet university student who found comfort in stories more than people. She'd always felt that books spoke to her in ways humans never could. When she heard the rumors, she didn't scoff or laugh them off like her classmates. She wanted to see for herself. One rainy evening, she pushed open the heavy oak doors of the library, her reflection flickering in the dim glass. The librarian, an old man with eyes that seemed to know too much, gave her a knowing smile, but said nothing as she drifted between the aisles. Clara chose a book at random, her fingers brushing the worn spine of a novel about a young woman searching for her place in the world. She tucked it under her arm, heart pounding with both excitement and dread, as though the book already knew her better than she knew herself. Later that night, she opened it. The pages turned easily, the story familiar, predictable, until she reached the end. The last chapter had changed. The handwriting was the same as the original author's, yet she knew it hadn't been there before. Her eyes widened as she read the words that described her, in detail, walking down a dark street, hearing footsteps behind her, and realizing she was not alone. Clara snapped the book shut, breath caught in her throat. Outside, the rain had stopped, but through the silence she thought she heard it, soft, steady footsteps, growing closer. Clara didn't move at first. She sat frozen in her chair, staring at the closed book as if it might open itself again and spill out more secrets. Her pulse thudded in her ears, her breath short and shallow. Footsteps, that's what the book had promised. And now, in the silence of her small apartment, she swore she could hear them outside her window. But when she finally gathered the courage to look, the street was empty. Just puddles reflecting the pale glow of the lamps. No shadowed figure. No one waiting. She let out a shaky laugh, trying to convince herself it was just her imagination, just the power of suggestion. Yet the words on the page wouldn't leave her mind. This wasn't Clara's first time feeling like life was being written for her. She had grown up in a quiet neighborhood where she always seemed to fade into the background. Her parents, hardworking but distant, barely noticed the stories she filled in her notebooks. Books were her escape, her place of control, where she could decide the ending. That was why the library called to her in the first place. It was more than rumor to her. It was a chance to see if fate could truly be read, or worse, rewritten. The librarian, Mr. Harland, had watched her carefully when she checked out the book. He never asked why people borrowed things, but he always seemed to know more than he should. Locals said he'd been there longer than anyone could remember, never aging, never leaving the building. Clara wondered if he already knew what she'd find in those pages, and whether he had silently tried to warn her with that knowing smile. That night stretched endlessly. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the glass made her heart jolt. Sleep never came. Instead, she kept reopening the book, tracing the final words with trembling fingers, trying to convince herself they weren't real. Yet the ink felt too fresh, the details too precise. It wasn't just predicting footsteps. It was predicting her fear. The following morning, Clara carried the book back to the library. The oak doors groaned open, and the familiar musty air wrapped around her. Mr. Harland was at the desk, sorting returns with his usual silence. Clara placed the novel down, her hands lingering on the cover. She wanted to ask him, to demand how the endings appeared, who was writing them, and why. But when she opened her mouth, no words came. His eyes met hers, sharp and steady, as if daring her to voice the question. She turned to leave, but as she passed the shelves, another book slid forward on its own. Its spine caught the light. She froze, staring at it. The title was faint, but her name was in it. Elena's grip tightened on the journal until her knuckles went white. The more she read, the more it felt like she was being dissected on paper. Her fears, her doubts, even the thoughts she buried so deeply she never admitted them aloud. Whoever was writing this knew her in ways no one should. Jonah hovered near the window, peering through the blinds into the street below. I swear, someone's been following us. That same black car, every night. His paranoia was starting to show cracks in his calm facade. Elena noticed the tremor in his hand, the way he avoided looking at her directly. He was unraveling. Her instinct told her to comfort him, but another voice whispered, what if he was hiding something too? He hadn't told her about the photo until tonight. What else was he keeping back? Across the city, Detective Marlowe lit another cigarette, the smoke curling upward like the ghosts of his unsolved cases. He thought about the survivor who supposedly knew what happened to Elena's brother. A witness coming forward after a decade was rare, but what gnawed at him was the timing. Why now? He flipped through his notes until his eyes landed on the anonymous caller's words. She's reading it now. Once she finishes, you'll see. Marlowe didn't know who she was, but the weight in his gut told him he was already too late to stop it. Back in the apartment, Elena traced her brother's handwriting with her fingertips. The entries began to blur, shifting from familiar loops into jagged strokes. She froze at a passage scrawled violently across 2 pages. The one she trusts most will lead her into the dark. Her gaze snapped to Jonah. He felt it instantly. Don't look at me like that, he muttered, defensive. I've done everything to protect you. Then why didn't you tell me the truth from the start? Her voice broke with accusation. His silence was the answer she feared. A moral dilemma clawed at her chest. Keep trusting Jonah despite the secrets. Or accept that the only person she could rely on was gone, and maybe never coming back. The sound of glass shattering in the hallway snapped both of them out of their argument. Jonah rushed to the door, but Elena held him back. Wait, what if it's them? Every instinct screamed at her to run, yet another page in the journal burned in her memory. If she flees, she dies. If she stays, she learns. The words gave her no comfort. Meanwhile, Marlowe left his office, pocketing the photo of the boy at the elevator shaft. The phrase written on its back replayed in his mind like a curse. The lights go out, and one never returns. He didn't believe in fate, but something about this case felt orchestrated, like they were all just pawns in a story someone else was writing. And somewhere in the shadows of Elena's building, unseen eyes were watching, waiting for the moment the story demanded its next sacrifice. Clara couldn't shake the words from her mind. She will try to run from her story, but it will follow her. They echoed with every step she took, every glance over her shoulder. She had tried ignoring it, pretending the book was only paper and ink. But the truth was crawling closer, demanding to be faced. By the 3rd sleepless night, she broke. She needed answers. The library loomed larger than ever, its tall windows lit by a faint orange glow. Clara pushed open the doors, her footsteps too loud against the wooden floor. She wasn't alone this time. Mia had insisted on coming, brushing it off as a spooky adventure. If your magic books are real, then prove it, she said with a grin. Clara wished her friend would take it seriously, but part of her was grateful not to face the shadows alone. Mr. Harland was waiting at the desk, hands folded neatly, eyes sharp. He looked at Clara, then at Mia, and for the first time he spoke more than a greeting. You've read too much already. His voice was low, steady, final. Clara's throat went dry. What are they? The books. Who writes the endings? The librarian tilted his head. Not who. What? His gaze flicked toward the aisles. The library chooses. Mia laughed, breaking the tension. Okay, creepy. But you can't seriously expect us to believe a building rewrites novels. As if in answer, a book slid off a shelf behind them and hit the floor with a dull thud. Both girls turned. Clara's chest tightened, because it was the book, the one with her name. The air thickened. Dust motes swirled like sparks. Clara stepped toward it, every instinct screaming at her to stop, but something stronger pulled her forward. She bent down, fingers hovering just above the cover. Mia grabbed her wrist. Don't. What if it's... But Clara couldn't listen. She opened it. Blank pages. Every single one. Until the very last. And there, scrawled in dark ink, were words that made her stomach lurch. 2 will enter. 1 will leave. She dropped the book as if it had burned her. It hit the floor with a snap. The echo carried through the aisles like a warning bell. Mia frowned, trying to play it off, but Clara saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. That's just some messed up prank, Mia whispered. But her voice shook. Behind them, Mr. Harlan stepped closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally long across the floor. The library doesn't lie, he said softly. Clara's pulse hammered. The pages weren't predicting footsteps anymore. They were predicting a choice, a test, something that would pit her against the only person she trusted. She looked at Mia, who stared back with wide, uncertain eyes. Silence stretched. Too heavy, too sharp. And then another sound. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. From the dark end of the aisle. Slow, steady, not belonging to any of them. Clara's hand trembled as she reached for Mia. The book lay open between them, the ink spreading across the page as if alive, spelling new words that hadn't been there moments ago. Both girls leaned in, terrified, as the sentence finished itself. The ink on the page spread like veins, twisting letters into place until the sentence was whole. The enemy is not who she thinks. Clara's breath caught. She turned instinctively toward the aisle shadow, expecting the threat to emerge. But when she looked back at Mia, something shifted in her chest. The fear in her friend's eyes no longer looked like shared terror. It looked concealed. Mia tore her gaze away from the book. Clara, we have to get out of here, she said quickly. Too quickly. Her hand shot forward, snapping the book shut, as if to stop the words from spilling further. But Clara had seen them. The enemy is not who she thinks. Why did you do that? Clara's voice cracked with accusation. Mia avoided her eyes. Because this is messing with your head. Because it's not real. None of it is. Her tone was sharp, but her grip on the book was too tight, her knuckles pale. And that's when Clara noticed. Mia hadn't been surprised when the pages began to write themselves. Not truly. Mr. Harlan stepped closer, his shadow stretching long and thin across the aisle. You've kept your secret well, he said, his words aimed not at Clara, but at Mia. Clara's stomach dropped. What secret? Mia shook her head violently. Don't listen to him. He's twisting it. But Harlan's gaze cut through the air like a blade. She's been here before. Long before you. She knows the price. Clara's world tilted. Her best friend, the one she trusted more than anyone, had stood in this same library, maybe even read her own rewritten ending. She wanted to deny it, to push the thought away, but the look on Mia's face wasn't denial. It was guilt. Mia, Clara whispered. Is it true? Her friend's silence was the answer. The floorboards groaned. The air grew thick. More books slid from their shelves, spines cracking open, pages fluttering as if the library itself was awake, feeding on the tension between them. The book in Mia's hand trembled, then tore itself open. The ink raced across the page again. Only one can claim their story. Clara staggered back. The choice wasn't about footsteps anymore. It wasn't about fate chasing her. It was about betrayal, about survival. Mia's voice broke through the storm of panic. I didn't want you to find out like this. Her eyes glistened. But the library doesn't give. It takes. And if it's you or me, Clara, I can't let it be me. The words cut deeper than any blade. Clara's heartbeat thundered as the shelves shook, books slamming to the ground all around them. Mr. Harlan didn't intervene. He only watched, as if the story was playing out exactly as it should. And in the suffocating silence between falling books, Clara realized the cruelest truth of all. The library hadn't chosen the ending. Mia had. The shelves rattled like bones, books raining down in a storm of paper and ink. Clara backed away, her heart breaking faster than the wood beneath her feet. Mia's confession echoed in her mind, sharp, unforgiving. "You knew," Clara whispered. "All this time you knew." Mia's grip tightened on the book, her knuckles white. "It doesn't matter. The library demands a choice. If you don't take control, it will." The words struck like a bell. Clara remembered the line she had read before. She will try to run from her story, but it will follow her. She had tried to avoid it, denied it, and now the library was forcing her hand. Mr. Harlan stood like a statue in the chaos, his eyes locked on her. "It was never about reading your fate," he said quietly. "It was about writing it." The ink on the page writhed like a living thing, spelling faster and faster, until Clara saw her own name beside Mia's. "One will be erased." The room blurred. Pages flew like knives, slicing through the air. Mia lunged forward, thrusting the book toward Clara, as if to shove the decision into her hands. "Then write it," she screamed. Clara stared at the page. Every instinct begged her to take the pen, to fight for survival, to choose herself. But another thought struck, cold and clear. The library fed on endings, on fear. What if the only way to win was not to play? She looked up at Mia, her friend, her betrayer, and something inside her broke free. Clara shoved the book shut. "No," she whispered. "This isn't your story. Or mine. It's theirs." She gestured to the endless shelves. For the first time, the library reacted not with fury, but with stillness. The storm froze midair. Pages hung, suspended like snow. The ink stopped crawling. Mia's face twisted in panic. "You can't just refuse it." But the silence deepened. And then the words began to fade, bleeding off the paper, off the shelves, vanishing as though they'd never been written. Clara felt the weight lift, though her chest still ached. She had broken the pattern. She hadn't chosen Mia's death, or her own. She had chosen not to give the library what it wanted. Mia dropped the book. Her hands shook. "Clara, what did you do?" Clara stepped back, voice steady now. "I ended the story." Mr. Harlan finally moved, and for the first time, he smiled without malice. Almost gently. "Not ended," he corrected. "Rewritten." The doors of the library groaned open on their own, spilling in the light of dawn. The shelves were silent once more. Clara turned and walked away, her pulse still wild, her heart raw. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew this. Her future was hers again. But on the desk behind her, a single book remained. Its spine bore no title, until fresh ink began to etch 3 words. "To be continued." When Clara stepped out of the library, the dawn felt different. The streets glistened with rain, the air cool against her skin. For the first time in days, the silence wasn't oppressive. It was freeing. Behind her, the doors creaked shut, sealing away the library's restless whispers. She didn't know if they would ever open again, or if someone else would be drawn there in the future. But she had survived not by choosing an ending, but by refusing to let fear write it for her. That was the real secret the library had hidden all along. Mia walked beside her, quiet. The distance between them felt heavier than the bookshelves ever had. Clara still loved her friend, but trust was a fragile thing. Betrayal, once spoken, could not be unwritten. And maybe that was the cruelest truth. Not everything could be rewritten, no matter how magical the library seemed. Still, Mia's presence was proof of something. She hadn't let the library take Clara's life, even when fear and selfishness had pushed her close. And Clara hadn't chosen vengeance, even when she could have. They both carried scars now, but scars, Clara realized, were not just wounds. They were stories of survival. The librarian's final words echoed in her mind. Not ended. Rewritten. It struck her that every person lives inside a kind of library. Every decision, every hesitation, every risk or fear writes itself into their story. And most of us spend too much time flipping ahead, desperate to know the ending, forgetting that what matters is how we write the pages we hold right now. Clara stopped, watching the sunrise spill gold across the wet pavement. She took a deep breath, her reflection stretching long in the light. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. She welcomed it. Because life is not about finding out what comes next. It's about creating it. And maybe that's the story the library had been waiting for all along. So if you ever find yourself lost in questions, fearing what the final page might hold, remember Clara's choice. The ending doesn't have to be written for you. You have the pen. You have the power. As Clara walked into the day, the library's shadow faded behind her. But on a quiet shelf inside, a single blank book waited patiently. It was not hers anymore. It was waiting for someone else. The question is, if you found it, would you dare to open it?